Hello, everybody. This is Angela here, and tonight I'm going to talk about something different on my channel, something that's been going on YouTube. I'm going to be talking about David Demars. David Demars was my life coach for 6 weeks, and I want to share my experiences publicly with regard to our relationship, our professional relationship, and this has nothing to do with Val, Toxic Free, or David's War. This has to do with me and my experience with David so that I could share my story. And what I'm saying is not my truth, but the truth. Okay? My name is Angela, and my mother was a horrible hoarder. I had a very traumatic childhood. My mother was all the signs of a sociopath, narcissistic personality disorder. I was an unloved child. Not every day was a bad day, but it was very bad. It was a very bad childhood. It was a very traumatic childhood, not only for me, but for my siblings as well. It's very difficult to grow up as a child of a hoarder.
And by the grace of God, I turned my life around. I went back to school, got my GED, took law courses, became a paralegal, put my life together, and did a complete 180. Thank God I never did drugs, or anything like that. In the present day, I work for a successful law firm, and life is good, but not all of life is good.
So, I had a lot of problems this past summer trying to cope with my coworkers. So I felt like I was far enough into my recovery where I didn't need to go back to therapy. So I chose a life coach. Okay. I like David Demars' videos. I thought that he was quite knowledgeable and charismatic, and he looked like he generally cared about the community and he wanted to help people. So I'm like, well, maybe it would be a good idea to talk to someone. Yeah. So I found it really hard to focus on because of all my work stress. So I was like, oh, maybe it'd be a good idea to talk to somebody. So I found Demars online, and I write to him, and I told him, what the situation is, that I'm working with this person that I feel is a sociopath. So I wanted to get some help to try to set better boundaries, because I grew up a very frightened child. It was very hard for me to assert myself, and I would blame myself whenever something went wrong. And that was one of the things that Dr. Schneider pointed out to me, my doctor. He's like, you blamed yourself for everything. Because my mother always blamed me for everything. So I carried these personality traits into my adulthood. And it really was damaging to my relationships. I wasn't meeting healthy men because I just didn't feel worthy of love. How could I? But I did have happy moments in my childhood, and I did. It's not all bad all the time. So getting into Demars, one of the things that bothered me was I had told him, we were talking, and I told him background information like I'm telling you all. And I said to him, I was once an exotic dancer. And he said, really? He's like, did you like that? He goes, maybe a little bit. You didn't like that? You like that, right? Or something like that he said to me, right? You like that, right? That, I quickly snapped and I said, no, I didn't like it. It was one of the most embarrassing and shameful periods in my life. And by him saying, after he said that, I felt ashamed. I really did it made me feel ashamed. So he didn't bring it up again, and neither did I. And we just moved on. So one of the things that annoyed me about the conversation was that he would talk to me, and his tone of voice sounded like I was like a 5-year-old child. You know how, like, when daddy talks to a 5-year-old child? Like, okay, Angela, this is what you gotta do. Like, talk like that. And it was kind of, I found it to be odd. Before I go any further, I just want to prove to everybody that I am telling the truth, that he was my life coach. I got the receipt for my credit card bill on my phone. Another thing that he did was, every time that I would try to communicate with him, like dialogue with him, he constantly cut me off and interrupted me. Constantly. To the point where where I left him a message and say, look, I thank you for all the great things you did, like really fluffing them up without meaning it, you know, because I don't like to hurt anybody's feelings. I'm like you really helped me, I said, and all this stuff, but you don't seem to listen. You don't seem to listen. You constantly interrupt me when I'm trying to talk to you. Okay? Constantly. But it bothered me about the exotic dancing when he did that. I never forgot that. I did not like his response to that. I thought that was highly inappropriate and unprofessional. But if you look at my statement here, I'm going to try to zoom it in on the camera because this is coming from my phone, my statement. If you look at 528, it says PayPal, talk to David, services. Yeah. So there's the proof that he was my life coach. So David, if you're watching this video, don't even go there and say that I wasn't your client, because I was. I didn't like the way he spoke in his tone of voice. It was like baby talk, you know. Another thing I told him was about my relationship with my adult son. My adult son, unfortunately, became a narcissist. And I cannot have a healthy relationship with my adult son. And right now, we are estranged, and I don't see my grandchildren, David. And I said, it just can't happen. He's like, well, I can help you with that, Angela. And I'm like, I don't think you can, David. And he's like, don't you want to see your grandchildren? And I felt so guilty for cutting my son off after David said that, because David made me feel like that I was a bad person for doing that, by him saying that. Yeah, I'm a bad person, and it's my fault that I don't see my grandchildren. Of course, I can't communicate with my narcissist son. And there's a way that I can communicate, according to David. And because, you know, I say that there isn't, I'm a bad grandmother. I'm a bad mother. I'm a bad grandmother. He didn't say that to me, but that's the way he made me feel. Another thing he did was when I talked about my past relationship with my ex-fiance. And I said that my ex-fiance, his mother was a diagnosed narcissist. Diagnosed. And he had a very traumatic childhood. And as a result, he had severe trust issues and extreme OCD. He ended the relationship, and then he wanted me back. And then I said, no, I'm done. So David called him a borderline. And I said, well, how do you know that he's a borderline when you never even met him to hear his side of the story? Okay. So David didn't respond after that. I'm not going to sit here and say that every conversation that I had with David was horrible, but the outcome was horrible. Horrible. David, you are not qualified to be a life coach. You are not like Dr. Schneider. You are not like the doctors that treated me at Belmont Hospital for issues, you know, back then. You know, these people listened. They were trained. You don't have no training. I mean, it was ridiculous. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And what really made me decide to discontinue services was two things. I specifically told him that I did not want to talk about details of my childhood with him. I said that it was too traumatic to go and revisit those memories, okay? But David didn't listen. No. I told him that I wanted to have better relationships in the present with people, and I don't, because of what happened in my past. I don't want to relive my past. I just want to be a bit more outgoing and social, and, you know, not be afraid so much. It's not that I don't reject people, but I do have problems, you know, getting close to people. Not like borderline or anything like that. Like, I do talk to people and stuff, but because of my mother and situations from, you know, my past, like, it was hard. But however, after my therapies, because the coaching sessions were on Friday nights and Saturday mornings, I had my vocal lessons, and I would be so upset after these coaching sessions that I couldn't focus, and ultimately I failed my choir audition. I'm not blaming David for that, okay? I'm not blaming, because I wasn't focusing before because of all the stress and work, but with David, it wasn't helping. I actually felt worse the next day. I felt ashamed. I felt guilty. I felt like it was my fault about, not seeing my grandkids. So because I was no contact, I broke my own rule and got in contact with my son to try to make amends. And guess what? It was disastrous. It was absolutely disastrous. And it upset me tremendously. We ended up getting into a fight, a tax war fight, and it ended badly. And we haven't spoken since. On the 4th coaching session, I'll never forget this one. I'm trying to talk to him to get his advice on how to be a bit more socially outgoing, to try to have better relationships. What I hired him for, right? He starts screaming at me, yelling at me, saying, Angela, what do you want? What is it that you want? Really? So my sister was sitting in the other room. And she's hearing this, witnessing this, right? That was another thing that was strange, speaking of my sister. My sister came in from the living room to get something to drink. So David saw her on the Skype call. And he's like, who's that? And I said, that's my sister. She's like sitting right there in the other room. He's like, well, I really don't like her to hear our sessions. And I said, I have nothing to hide. She stays. So I thought that was strange. Okay. Why would he care? I decided that I was just going to finish up with the final 2 lessons and keep it light. And it ended on a friendly note. I just was like, oh, I just want to discontinue therapy. Oh, wait, there is something I forgot. I showed him a picture of me because he has to see the picture. He was telling me how to heal the little girl inside of me and all this other goofy shit. Well, I specifically told him, I don't want to talk about my childhood. I don't want to talk about it because I already dealt with it in therapy. Right? So if I'm telling you something, it might be a good idea to listen. Right? Didn't listen. It got to the point where I was so angry. I held the picture up to the camera and I said, you see this little girl right here in this picture? This little girl no longer exists. This little girl grew into a healthy, self-confident adult. Okay, healthy, confident adult who just needs a little help in setting some boundaries. I just wanted to talk, That's what I'm paying you for. Needless to say, it ended pretty badly. And, it ended, I wouldn't say, for me, it ended pretty badly because I failed the Archdiocese choir audition. But I'm just saying that the coaching sessions didn't help, okay? Because the next day, I was just really pissed off and triggered, I didn't like the way that he made me feel guilty about my son. I didn't like the way he made me feel ashamed about my past with the exotic dancing. So that's something I'm proud of. By the grace of God, thank God I got away from that before I got led into prostitution. I don't know. There was an angel out there looking after me because, man, I got the hell away from that. I divorced my husband and it was horrible. Horrible. But David liked it, right? He liked knowing about that. He was all like wanting to hear about that. Mm-hmm. As I said, I ended it on a happy and like very, very friendly because I wanted to just slowly back out and discontinue and get the hell away from this person, which I did. I made the excuse that, I'm going to go back to my therapist. My health insurance covers it. No, I didn't. I didn't go back to therapy. I just didn't want your services anymore, David. That's what happened. The truth. Not my truth. The truth. Okay? I would never, ever hire this guy. Never, ever hire this guy. And I want to tell this community something. You have to understand something that life coaches, although there are good ones, you got to think about doctor-patient confidentiality, okay? Can you really be sure that these people are not going to talk about your private business to other people or sell your story to some book or anything like that, right? At least with a doctor, you know that they're bound by law not to do that, right? Another thing, if you are going to seek a life coach, get their resume, their curriculum vitae, it's called. Get a resume and get some references. And you may want to think about what's out there. So what happened was how I found out about Val toxic free was, I had wondered, after all this happened, I did a Google search on David Demars, and I had wondered if there were any other complaints about him. So I did a Google search, and I find this person named Evening Ransom. And I went on Evening Ransom's, clicked on the link, and Evening Ransom has a YouTube channel. And then there was this other woman named Val. So I started watching her videos, and I was like, hey, wait a minute. This guy is not a good person. There's complaints out here about him. And I'm just letting this community know that Val did not come to me looking to gang up on David Demars. I went looking for the truth, and I found them. Evening Ransom and Val. And guess what? I believe them. I have the personal experience with David Demars, and I'm telling you, I believe that he did what they said that he did to that woman, Elle, because his body language and his demeanor and him screaming at me the way he did that one time, oh yeah, he needs to be in therapy. He don't need to be here life coaching. And that's my opinion. That's not a smear campaign, because newsflash, defense, the defamation is the truth. And newsflash, everybody is entitled to an opinion. And that includes me. Okay, everybody, have a good night. And I'll catch you all in the next video.